Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, Canada. Your monarch, the monarch of the Great Britain and allied Commonwealth countries, Queen Elizabeth, begins a 4-day celebration of her 70th year on the throne of Great Britain. From the Wall Street Journal. Keep going. I love Jerusalem. You can play that whole thing. I don't think that's copyrighted. To mark Queen Elizabeth's record stint on the British throne, the next 4 days will see a royal jubilee to end all jubilees. The 96-year-old monarch has already witnessed 3 major celebrations of her reign: the Silver Jubilee in 1977, the Golden in 2002, and the Diamond in 2012. So this time around, the government has promised a spectacular once-in-a-generation show. A military parade, Union Jack bunting, and street parties are being laid on. Flaming torches will be lit across parts of the former British Empire. England's largest church bell will ring. And at the University of Texas, Tyler, the Alpha Tau Omega fraternity, is hosting a beer pong tournament commemorating the life and reign of the Queen. A race course in Scotland is planning a Corgi Derby. And in southern England, some 20 souls have signed up to run a 70-kilometer, 43.5-mile ultra-marathon. Jubilees are, by royal standards, a relatively recent affair. King George III kicked off the trend, celebrating at his 50th year on the throne in 1809, after he'd lost the colonies, of course. A handful of monarchs subsequently enjoyed lengthy reigns, and governments latched on to jubilees as a way to bring the nation together. The weekend will see an attempt outside Windsor Castle to break the record for the world's longest street party. The Royal Mint recently crafted its biggest commemorative gold coin ever. A monarchy-sanctioned competition to find a dessert dedicated to Her Majesty, the Queen, produced a winning lemon trifle. Queen Elizabeth's image was projected onto the Neolithic slabs at Stonehenge, and on it goes. Bravo, Queen Elizabeth. It's a great day. The only thing that makes me sad is that she's 96, which means Pope Francis might be Pope for another 11 years, in which case the Vatican will be an anarcho-syndicalist commune, and the church will have had a schism in the United States. But I digress. There is if you're a member of the Telegraph, Great Britain's finest newspaper, you are getting live updates on the Jubilee ahead of the Trooping of the Color parade. I've been to the Trooping of the Color once, and it was fabulous. But that's why I'm in a somewhat celebratory mode to open the show. We'll play Jubilee music throughout the day. There's a lot of great Jubilee music. Dwayne's Jubilee's coming up. He's going to be 96 fairly soon, and if we have to do the Platinum Jubilee of this show, Dwayne, we only have to go another 47 years and 29 days.
Hey, I'm 10 years younger than you are. I can make it if you can.
47 years and 29 days to our Silver Jubilee of the Hugh Hewitt Show. We've only been on the air 22 years and 11 months.
You got to make at least 30.
I'm not going for 30. No.
Well, now, so why are you talking Jubilee? If you're
you can sit there. You're going to be like the skeletons on Pirates of the Caribbean. Speaking of which, Johnny Depp won yesterday.
Well, yeah.
No, he won. I mean, you know what the bottom line is? He's not a physical abuser of his wife. She's a liar. He said some nasty things because she lied about him. The net is $9 million to Johnny Depp and his reputation and probable process. I may watch Pirates of the Caribbean today as a salute to that. Let me get to the news. Documents reveal hundreds of Russian troops broke ranks over Ukraine orders. This is in the Wall Street Journal. Look, they've had a few coups in the last 100 years of the Soviet Union, then Russia, and attempted coups. And this thing is going so bad in Ukraine, they announced a pause today. Because while they have, they've made a desert and called it peace in another part of the Donbass, they're losing so many Russian junior officers and enlisted men. I wouldn't be surprised if we see tanks in front of the Kremlin before long. Because the military's got to be saying, this guy is nuts, this whole thing is nuts, we don't have any tanks left, people are dying, time for Putin to go the way of Beria. And if you don't know what that means, then you're not well educated, and you ought to be. Putin threat highlights the dangers of a new, riskier nuclear era, according to David Sanger and William Broad in the New York Times. So he's rattling his nuclear saber because he's got nothing left. Meanwhile, Israel, U.S. pledge economic, diplomatic, and military coordination to stop Iran nukes. The fact that Israel is exercising all of its planes at once and they're pointed towards Tehran, good. We had another shooting event yesterday. I was on with Bret Baier, Guy Benson, Mara Eliason during the panel when it was announced a mass casualty event in Tulsa. The shooter was at a Tulsa medical clinic. Police Captain Richard Muhlenberg said the shooting wasn't a random act. It's not as if he went to the hospital and was indiscriminately shooting at people. That suggests to me, I don't know, it hadn't been reported on, more a workplace violence or a dispute. It's, of course, not excused. It's not Uvalde, and it's not Buffalo. Wall Street Journal notes in a blistering editorial today, Biden has no plan to fight inflation. The president has no plan. I don't know if the president has a day timer. I really do not know. Jim Garrity's National Review piece today is very blunt. The president is too old to be president, and we know that, right? I mean, does anyone argue that? The Peter Ducey hit for the cycle yesterday, twice tripping up Karen Jean-Pierre, which is like getting singles off of me if I'm pitching, and then got a double off of the press secretary, and they got a triple and a home run off the president. But really, by the end of the day, I think people were saying, this president is just not what we're... I mean, I could play all the tape, but I don't want to depress you on a Thursday morning. We'll come back to that. House Republicans unveil conservative roadmap on climate and energy. It's a pretty good roadmap. It means produce more energy, American, because we have the cleanest energy in the world, and stop shutting down American energy. Johnny Depp trial, actor wins defamation case against Amber Heard. That's the Telegraph. Washington Post, jury rules actors Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defamed each other. Johnny Depp is awarded $15 million in damages. Jurors gave her $2 million. That's called a win-win for Johnny Depp. Anytime you want to make that trade, I'll do that, Dwayne. You want to give me $15 million, I'll give you $2 million. Speaking of which, Dwayne has been unavailable because Suzanne Zimmer has listed her Malibu home for $56 million, and Dwayne's been looking at it, and that's not, it's really not in your price range, Dwayne.
I'm just now discovering that, working where I do, I'm just now discovering it's just a little bit out of my price range.
You've got to be Hans Zimmer to be able to afford to have your ex-wife have a $56 million home. Now, what's very interesting is they bought it in 1995 for $2.8 million. So there's been a little home inflation in Southern California.
That's when I started in radio.
Well, if you had $2.8 million there, you'd have $56 million now.
Right.
I'm just telling you. If you can buy a home, I'm going to do my Andrew and Todd ad early because of that. Prices are not going down. Go to andrewandtodd.com. They're a great sponsor of our show. Call them at 888-888-1172. Do not wait. It's not, your house is not going to go from $2.8 million to $56 million. Well, it's Joe Biden. It might happen in under 95, 2005. That's 25 years. So it's gone up $2 million a year in Malibu. So I don't think your house is going to go up $2 million a year. But if you don't buy one, it's not going to go up. So rents are going up. Home prices are going up. AndrewandTodd.com with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. That's where you buy your house from. 888-888-1172. They lend you the money. They help you soup to nuts to do the pre-qualification letters so that when you walk in the door, they don't throw you out. They help you close the loan. They lock in your mortgage, which are going up. The 10-year Treasury today, what's the market report? The market report's next segment, but I want to look at the 10-year Treasury yesterday. Went up again to 2.93, still below 3%. That means you'll get a 5% loan for 30 years. Now you say, I missed my 3% loan. Yeah, you did. But it's going to go up to 12% because Joe Biden's president. And honestly, he doesn't have any idea what's going on. They walk back Joe Biden more than you walk your dog. Really. And so if you think he's going to control home price inflation, you're nuts. Go become a non-occupying co-borrower with your son or daughter or grandson and granddaughter. Get him into a house. Put your name on the loan, andrewandtodd.com. We come back, I'll talk about Pete Arredondo. I feel bad for this guy, but not nearly as bad as I feel for the parents and family of the 19 students who 2 teachers murdered on his watch as the chief of the 6-person School District Police Department in Uvalde. More on that when we return to America. 1-800-520-1234. Connection to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Bravo to the Queen, 70 years on the throne. Today, the celebrations will go on for 4 days. No one is celebrating in the United States. They can't afford to go anywhere. We talked about inflation on Special Report. I was on the panel last night. Bret Baier, of course, hosting Special Report. The panel was Guy Benson, which is a circle of life thing for me. We are not yet back on set. And I said to him, my ambition is to be on set with Guy so I can then retire and Mara Liasson. And the reason is because, of course, Mr. Benson, hired by Mr. Centrella as a board operator when he was at Northwestern, is now a star of stage and screen. And I want to experience that, my life flash before my eyes when Guy, who was not shaving when he first guest hosted on the radio show, is now very, very able. Cut number 29 is my comments on Secretary Yellen. We were talking inflation on Special Report panel yesterday. Cut 29.
Hugh, it's interesting to see all these folks come out now, including the president, and saying it is a major problem. We feel your pain, but we can't really do that much about it.
Janet Yellen's "I was wrong" will be in 1 million campaign ads this fall, Brett. And I think it's the equivalent of market capitulation in political terms. Peter Doocy hit for the cycle twice against the press secretary and then twice against the president. And they're reeling because they've got no story to tell other than bad news. And I guess there is some quality points for candor, but 8.3% inflation hits every American every day. It's a political disaster, and it's worse. It's an economic disaster for Americans. That's just it. It's just, I was talking during the break with Dwayne, lots of Americans aren't going anywhere. We return to that subject, cut number 30.
Politico writes, Hugh, the White House has one problem that rules them all: gas prices. Biden and his top advisors fixate on them with an intensity that some aides describe as obsessive. White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain has grown particularly absorbed by the issue, checking the average price of a gallon of gas every morning. He's lamented that it's the one item everyone knows the cost of because gas station billboards are so ubiquitous throughout the country. What about this and the impact of gas prices? Everybody does feel it every day.
Oh, I think you can't get away from the fact that if you pull up to a gas pump and you have any size vehicle and it's not an electric vehicle, you get walloped, and you get walloped again and again and again. Election after election after election this fall will be fought over gas prices from the West Coast to the East Coast, from the North to the South. Every American consumer gets hit. And as Guy just pointed out, the president can send market signals that bring down the cost of gasoline by opening up production. He could do it yesterday. He can do it today. He can do it tomorrow. And that's the simple truth. Then Brett had asked us to pick a race to discuss. I picked the Senate race in Nevada for a very, very obvious purpose. Cut number 31.
All right, Hugh.
I'm looking at the Silver State, Brett. In Nevada, we'll be up late on election night seeing if incumbent Catherine Cortez Masto can hang on against a very talented Adam Laxalt, who has previously been the Attorney General in Nevada. Adam Laxalt has the advantage, if he wins the primary on June 14th, as he's expected to, of having had as his roommate at Navy Officer School the most popular Republican in America, not named Trump, that is Ron DeSantis, who's already stumped for him. Adam is a great candidate to begin with. The invisible senator is Cortez Masto. It may come to Leader McConnell becoming Majority Leader McConnell again when Laxalt gets over the line with Latino votes, because gas prices matter so much in Las Vegas to the I-15 crowd who drive over from California. And I want to tell people about this. Yeah, there are people who like to go to Las Vegas a lot, and the cost of going to Las Vegas from L.A. or Southern California has doubled. It's maybe even tripled, because if you're getting in your car in Ventura and you're going to drive the 101 over to the 10, over to the 15, up to Vegas, you're talking about, what, $300? And then pay another $300 to come back? And that doesn't count the $300 you are guaranteed to lose, because they don't make anything in Las Vegas. And so everything that you see in Las Vegas has been built by the money that people voluntarily left behind in Las Vegas. So the gas prices are killing Nevada, and Catherine Masto, I can't remember her name ever. She is simply a terrible senator, the invisible senator, and Cortez Masto. And she is going to lose to Adam Laxalt. And I think he's going to be nominated on June 14th. Stay tuned, America. I'll be right back. I'll look at the markets yesterday. We'll continue to salute the Queen on this, her 70th anniversary of her accession to the British throne. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We're playing Jubilee music as the Queen begins her Jubilee. We're very happy for her. And 70 years on the throne. Great lady of great dignity, and she's done her job very well. Let me do the market check brought to you by Birch Gold this hour. Birch Gold is where you should be buying your gold, and you should be buying some gold. 5% of any retirement portfolio in a Birch Gold administered IRA, 401k, Roth IRA. The IRS respects and knows that Birch Gold is legit. You cannot do this on your own. You have to have a third party establish a precious metals IRA. Free information kit is available from hughgold.com or text my name Hugh to 989898. The Dow dropped 176 points yesterday. The S&P was off 30, the Nasdaq off 86. Gold, however, went up to 1,857, reclaiming territory it had lost in the first 2 days of this week. It's green this morning in Germany and France, stable in England. Everyone's partying, I think, in England. Amazon, beloved Amazon, went up yesterday when everything went down. That's because it splits, I think, tomorrow. If you have one share, you'll have 20. So it splits. That's like making change. It doesn't actually change the value of the stock. It does add to its increasing volatility on, smaller traders can buy, and it should have a temporary, almost always there's a temporary uplift, but you don't buy a stock because it's going to split. But you can buy a stock more easily after it splits. But Amazon has been having a little run here, and that makes me happy. But Birch Gold is where you get your gold at $18.57 an ounce. HughGold.com, or you text Hugh, H-E-G-H, to 989898. Look, nobody enjoys telling the truth about older people. But I'm going to read to you Jim Garrity's Morning Jolt, the headline of which is simply, Joe Biden is too old to be president. And Jim is not insensitive to aging people. I'm 66. He might think I'm too old to be on the radio. And by the way, this is a message to all of my older listeners. When you are still compos mentis, you sit down with your kids or your nephews and nieces, and you talk to them about your estate. You put one of them on your checking account and your savings account. You give them the power of attorney and a medical thing. You can do all this, by the way, online at any of a number of legal places. It's not difficult. You do your will, and you make them squirm a little bit. You say, okay, we're going to talk about when I die, because here's the deal. You're going to die. This morning's Bible in the Air with Father Mike Schmidt from Ascension Press was the last 3 chapters. It was 1 Kings 11, which is Solomon getting off the reservation. I mean, Solomon went full Moloch. I didn't know that until this morning. That's like the worst god in the Old Testament. That's child sacrifice stuff. So no wonder Solomon lost his kingdom. But then we also finished reading or listening to Father Mike Schmidt, and he's got a mellifluous voice. It's a wonderful pod every day, about 18 to 25 minutes of scripture read by Father Mike Schmidt with a little message afterwards. And we listened to the last 3 chapters of Ecclesiastes. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity, and a chasing after wind. And it's about getting old. And so this, I listen to that, and I come down and I see Jim Garrity's Morning Jolt is about Joe Biden is too old to be president. And so here's my lecture. Make your kids sit down and talk to you about what is going to happen after you die. Talk to them about the money and the property, talk if you have any. Talk to them about where you'd like to be buried, or if you're going to be cremated, or if you want to be scattered at sea. I haven't made any arrangements for that yet. The fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I have disagreement on plans. Now, we meet up in the hereafter, but I want to go into the Manu Cathedral in Orange County, but I haven't been down to reserve the spot yet. I got to do that when I'm next in California. Because, I mean, hey, if you're going to be there for a long time, I don't know when the second coming's coming, so I think I'd like to be at Christ the King Cathedral in Orange County. But I may change my mind. But anyway, we've sat down with the kids and made them repeatedly listen. Okay, here's the deal on the property and the money. And by the way, the oldest is going to be on the bank account. And you, son, lieutenant, you're going to come get the keys when I'm hitting the garage every day. And by the way, we have long-term care insurance. And if dementia grabs us, and you never know if it's going to, I don't expect to be in your home, and I don't want to be in your home, and you're crazy for me to be in your home. And we just have these conversations because the more you have them, the less fraught they are. So have one. Now, the fraught conversation that Jim Garrity had with the president today runs this way. On the menu today, as President Biden continues to misstate his own policies, it is a painful sign that the next president must be someone who has enough youth and energy to handle the pressures of the job. The next president should not be in his 70s or his 80s, Jim writes. Jim continues, I realize this is ageist, but the presidency is one of the hardest jobs in the world, and executing the duties of the presidency will require someone who is in good physical and mental health, ideally with a lot of vigor, and an ability to handle off-the-chart stress and a relentless workload. Joe Biden was not the most verbally or mentally disciplined guy back when he was vice president, and his advancing age is worsening his problems. The president really can't speak off script anymore without blurting out something that undermines the case he was trying to make. Republicans may not mind having a president who is so ineffective, but over the long term, it isn't good for the country to have a commander-in-chief who can't handle portions of the job. A good recent example came on Monday when President Biden was discussing gun control and left the impression that he wants to ban 9mm rounds, the single most popular handgun in the U.S. 9mm rounds do not blow the lung out of the body. The Second Amendment is not about hunting, and yet Biden decided off the cuff to propose an ammunition ban that not even the most ardent gun control advocates are seriously considering. Roughly 42% of all handguns produced from 2010 to 2019 used 9mm rounds. Also note the Uvalde shooter did not use 9mm rounds. Passing any change to federal law to address mass shootings will require getting 60 votes in the Senate, which will require 10 Republican votes. That is going to be an extremely difficult task. In the best of circumstances, Biden going out and deciding on the spur of the moment to declare that we would be better off with sweeping bans on ammunition will not make it easier to get votes. This is Grandpa's story time, when Biden sort of kind of remembers a conversation from a quarter century ago and feeds the need to share it, regardless of whether or not doing so actually helps achieve his goals. Back in April, Philip Klein observed that Biden still speaks like a senator. There's a lot of leeway for engaging in speculation while talking out various ideas. Consider in just the past few months, January 19th. What you're going to see is that Russia will be held accountable if it invades. And it depends on what it does. If one thing is it's a minor incursion, then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do. March 25th, for God's sake, this man Putin cannot remain in power. April 4th, Putin is a war criminal. 2 days ago, President Biden said the U.S. would not send Ukraine rockets that would reach Russia later that day. A U.S. official clarified sending multiple launch rocket systems, which are capable of reaching Russia, is still under consideration. 3 times Biden has said the U.S. would militarily defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion, and suggests that the U.S. made a commitment to doing so, even though there is no defense treaty ensuring that assistance, at least none that we know of, Jim. Question, are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that? President Biden, yes. You are? President Biden, that's the commitment we made. That's the commitment we made. In each case, the White House staff quickly went out and insisted to the press that the president has meant that opposite of what he just said, that under no scenario would NATO tolerate a minor incursion, that the U.S. was not seeking regime change in Russia, and that Biden was only speaking from the heart when he said Putin was a war criminal, and that the U.S. government has not officially concluded that there was evidence of Russian war crimes committed in Ukraine. Biden kept insisting after his Taiwan statement that no U.S. policies have changed, but the U.S. president publicly declared that the U.S. military will defend Taiwan is a change of policy. On any given day, Jim Garrity continues, what Biden says that U.S. policy is and what U.S. policy actually is are no closer than distant cousins. Everyone in the White House knows Biden's mouth can't be trusted. That's why he hasn't done a sit-down interview since chatting with NBC's Lester Holt back on February 10. In that interview, Biden got a bit testy and called Holt a wise guy for bringing up Biden's assertion from last July that inflation would be temporary. How dare Holt ask Biden about his previous assurances to the public? Biden's communication teams know he can burst out with that was 4 days ago, 5 days ago, at any moment. All that is backdrop to this week's scoop from NBC, which reports that Biden is increasingly irritated with his staff and believes he is being poorly served by him. The reason Republicans have the talking point that Joe Biden is not fully in command of the White House is because Joe Biden is not fully in command of his White House. As Kyle Smith observed, if Biden really was in charge, he could fire everyone he felt was undermining him. Biden really does more than one public event per day. He almost never does events at night. He rarely makes public appearances on weekends, and he spends almost every weekend in Delaware. That NBC report also makes Biden sound like an insufferable whiner. It seems that even usually loyal Democrats are getting tired of having to pretend that everything is fine. And it goes on and on. I recommend you read it. I tweeted it out. My Twitter handle is Hugh Hewitt. It's bad. And look, I'm going there someday soon. I'm 66. Pretty soon, I know that the scholar is going to be sitting next to me at every Thanksgiving. That's my oldest grandchild. And after a while, she'll figure out a way not to sit next to me. And then Jack, the Artful Dodger, will be sitting there. And after that, Genghis Kate. By the way, Genghis Kate is now surveying the infant as Circe kind of surveyed everybody. We got a video yesterday telling Nana that the baby was in her place. The baby was on the baby mat. And I really do fear for the baby because Circe, Genghis Kate, just does not like this baby. I mean, she does. I am. I'm just thinking that it's this. I'll send you the Circe video.
Well, that kid ended up winning, right?
Yeah, that kid ended up winning, but he's seeing a raven wherever he goes. But Circe, I don't want to call Genghis Kate Circe. She hasn't done any harm to anyone. But this video is hilarious, and I don't post videos of my grandkids, but it just made us all laugh because it's a 30-minute death stare. It's like Darth Vader and the Captain, but Teddy is fine. The fact of the matter is, I know that when the scholars start showing up, and I'm at the end of the table and there's only one person next to me, and it's a scholar, I've gone past the sell-by date. And they'll be nice to me. And I will tell her about Dwayne. Every single Thanksgiving, I'll tell her about Dwayne. And I'll tell her about the debates, and I'll tell her about President Trump and President Bush and President Reagan and President Nixon. I know that's coming. It's
Are
like
you saying I'm living rent-free in your head?
You're going to be part of the endless 8-track. Do we have Diamond Girl by Seals and Croft to go out with? Do we have Diamond Girl?
I'm sure we can find it.
Can we bring up Diamond Girl for the ReliefFactor.com ad?
I'm living rent-free in Hugh's head. I love that.
You might be called by a different name, and I might say that Dwayne's 9mm can't be allowed out there. I don't know. But I know it's coming. I read Ecclesiastes, and that's okay. Every Catholic kid is taught to think of 4 things. There you go. I took 4 different girls to hear Seals and Croft at Blossom from 1973 to 77, and they always play this song. I hate this song, but it's in my head. ReliefFactor.com is in my body. All right, I'm 66. I need this. So do you.
It's a small world in my head.
ReliefFactor.com. I carry in curcumin and resveratrol. Why do I need it? Because as Ecclesiastes says, you fall down a lot when you turn 65. And I did. Out running, not so fast. I didn't see the branch in front of the branch, and so I hit the branch after the branch, and ouch, it hurts. But ReliefFactor.com makes it better. 1995. Gosh, I hate this song. Did they play this endlessly? It's almost as bad as Ebony and Ivory and the all-time...
It's
Me and Julio down by the schoolyard.
Oh, no. The worst is Mockingbird.
No. Me and Julio down by the schoolyard is by far. That was the summer I had to paint every carport at Terrace North. Michael Oren's coming up, and Michael's my age, so he'll know all the bad music from 1973. But I don't know if he has ReliefFactor.com. We have serious things to talk to about Michael Oren, though. Enjoy Seals and Croft. Go get your ReliefFactor.com because it's good for you. Nature's anti-inflammatories. I'll be right back on the Aging Hugh Hewitt Show. I saw lifeguards jump from their towers to get away from this song. Michael Oren is a contemporary of mine. He ambassador from Israel to the United States, but he grew up in the United States. And were you ever a lifeguard, Michael Oren?
Yeah, I wasn't a particularly good one.
Well, neither was I. But I mean, this song, when it would come on with "I Shot the Sheriff," they were just excuses to scream. Michael, having a little fun this morning. The Queen's Jubilee is today, her Platinum Jubilee. The Platinum Jubilee of this show will be on July 10th, 2070. Will you join us for that?
Yes, I will. God willing. Actually, we're going to the reception here at the British Embassy. It's very nice.
Oh, congratulations. I did not get that invite. I used to get invited when Trump was president. I did not get that invite, doggone. Michael, I wanted to ask you about the exercises that are being run en masse by every soldier and pilot and special forces in Israel about Iran. What do we take from that?
What you should take from it. We're getting ready. And that a possible operation against Iran is immensely complex and dangerous. We do not have strategic bombers. I've said this many times on the program. We do not have B-1s. We don't have B-2s. We don't have B-52s. We have fighter jets, which have to be, in order to strike Iran, have to be refueled. They have limited payloads, and it's very, very complex. So our Air Force has been training over the Mediterranean. We don't have a lot of land to train over. But reportedly, and the Army has said this, I'm not revealing anything secret, that they're training to strike Iranian nuclear facilities, which are very spread out. It's an archipelago. It's not one place. It's not, it's not the Osiris reactor in Iraq or the Syrian reactor that we destroyed in 2007. Now they're all over the place and they're dug down deep. So it's very, very complicated. But that's just the beginning of the complications, because Iran could strike back with 150 missiles in the hands of Hezbollah.
150,000, right? 150,000.
150,000. Yes, many of them are dug underground, under 200 villages in southern Lebanon. Those villages have houses. Those houses have people in them. Hezbollah wants us to kill those people so that we'll be branded war criminals. But our army is training to go from village to village, house to house, and take out those missiles, because according to the Army's estimate, we'll be hit with between 2,000 and 4,000 rockets per day.
Now, tell me a little bit about, if you can, to the extent it's not classified, does Israel have Tomahawk equivalents so that they can fire from their fleet underwater precision missile strikes on the nuclear facility? Actually, we cannot let Iran. North Korea has taught us one thing. Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon, or everything is done.
How about Ukraine? You see what Putin has done just by rattling a nuclear saber.
Yep.
Has frightened everybody off. Sure. And the Iranians will do the exact same thing. We won't be able to defend ourselves against terror if Iran gets that capability. Israel has a very, I say, advanced and capable sea-to-ground ability. We've invested very heavily in a submarine force for that reason specifically. And the Iranians know this. We have that ability to strike, I would say, anywhere in Iran from the sea.
Okay, so you've got the weakest government of the time that you have been guest on this show, which is for 23 years. And this is the weakest government I've ever seen in Israel. Is it strong enough to strike Iran if need be?
And that is what keeps me awake, what you just said. Because, when you have a citizens' army, you've got to answer to the mothers. You've got to answer to the wives and the daughters and the kids. You just don't make that decision. And if we go to war and we have casualties, and certainly we would have casualties in a war of this magnitude, parents are going to come to this government and say, who elected you? What authority do you have? And we have a prime minister who basically doesn't have a party now, and the government doesn't have a majority. My fear is that the Iranians know this. They know that the world is preoccupied with Ukraine, and everyone's bogged down, and that is why they're racing forward. And that's precisely what keeps me awake at night.
So, Dr. Oren, to conclude this happy talk, when is the outside limit at which Iran either puts down its nukes or Israel puts them down for it?
Well, back in 2012 at the General Assembly, Netanyahu, then Prime Minister, drew a bomb, you may remember, and that bomb had a red line across it. And that red line was at 250 kilograms of uranium enriched to 20%. Now, 20% is a very short distance from weapons grade, which is about 90%. It's hard to get your head around that. 1 to 20 is a much, much bigger difference in terms of enrichment than 20 to 90. And right now, Iran has 380 kilograms of enriched material, but not rich. That entire stock is not over 20%. Once that goes over 20%, according to that red line, Israel would have to act.
So that's soon.
Well, that was the Netanyahu red line. Yeah.
You think Bennett believes that?
Indeed. There are different estimates, and I remember hearing different estimates when I was in government as well. But that's as good a metric as any.
Benny Gantz, we have 1 minute. Benny Gantz knows this, right? When does Gantz get the prime ministership and Netanyahu come in as number 2 as the defense minister so we can be serious about the government in Israel?
Netanyahu had a very, very good week this week. One of the charges against him, the most serious charge against him, began to unravel. Very good. And there are rumors that he is already now in negotiations with other members of the government to bolt and join him in a center-right government.
Oh, pray that it happens. From your lips to God's ears, Michael Oren, follow him on Twitter, Dr. Michael Oren. Thank you. Coming right back. Hour number 2, America. Stay tuned. Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's the Queen's Jubilee for 4 days, 70 years on the throne. We have worked it out here. We will be Platinum Jubilee. Oh, my goodness. We are going to be having our Platinum Jubilee on July the 10th, 2070. So we hope you'll be listening to the Hugh Hewitt Show. I think we can predict how that show will sound.
It'll be really quiet.
Very, very quiet show.
It'll sound a lot like that.
Yeah, that's
only one currently on staff that has a prayer of living that long
is Jacob. And if Jacob, would you please stop somewhere on July the 10th, 2070 and say, this would have been the Platinum Jubilee of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Okay. Good luck. God love you, Queen. Okay, let's get to the tough stuff. The president, oh my goodness, they had a Zoom baby formula presser yesterday, which, you know, if someone had told me during the election that we'd be having Zoom baby formula pressers, that might have been a clue.
I still want to know who at the White House thought that was a good idea.
Well, I don't know who at the White House thinks anything, but cut number 10, the president talking, actually, this is the Perrigo CEO. Speaks up and lays it out for the president so that he knows coming into this that actually it's not really good for him. Cut number 10.
The very first thing we did when we heard about the Abbott recall was we could foresee that this was going to create a tremendous shortage. We significantly increased all our material orders. We began communication with the FDA immediately. We began collaborating closely with the FDA, our retail customers, and other stakeholders to identify and prioritize what was most critical. And we've been meeting, by the way, weekly with the FDA ever since.
All right. So the head of a baby formula company says, when you close that Abbott plant.
They all knew.
We all knew. So the president says this, cut number 11.
I met early on with those CEOs, and they were they were trying to figure out how they could move quickly, and you've been very helpful. So thank you.
He didn't meet with
He
him.
did not meet with any CEO until May. Cut number 12.
The question you always on every single thing: why didn't you act sooner? Well, I don't think anyone anticipated the impact of the shutdown of one facility in the Abbott facility. And it was accurately shut down because the formula was questioned in terms of its purity. And so once we learned of the extent of it and how broad it was, we kicked everything into gear. And I think we're on the way to be able to completely solve the problem. But
Mr. President, didn't the CEOs just tell you that they understood it would have a very big impact?
they did, but I didn't.
Yeah, everybody in the business knew, but we didn't have a clue.
Everybody at the FDA knew. Everybody at HHS knew. Everybody in the room knew except Joe.
So let's go to cut number 3, the president.
Today, we're announcing the United Airlines has agreed to offer cargo space for Kendall NutriCare for the delivery of 3.7 bottles of the formula here in the States.
Boy, those middle seats are getting awfully small.
3.7 bottles.
They can't fit the bottle.
Look, we're making fun of the guy because he chose to run. I'm not going to pull punches anymore. The country has got to realize we do not have a full-time president. We've got a morning president. When my first teenager was my first teenager, there were 3 of her. There was morning teenager, afternoon teenager, and evening teenager. And morning teenager did not talk and grumbled. Afternoon teenager was too busy to talk, and then evening teenager wouldn't shut up. And so that's teenagers. It kind of goes in reverse when you're 80 years old. All right, so morning 80-year-old, great for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Afternoon, pretty hazy. And sundowners get their name for a reason. And so we have got a problem. And you know what? I'm not the only one that knows it. Do you think everybody in the world who wants to take advantage of the United States knows this? Do you think everybody in the White House knows this? Everybody knew this. By the way, would this have come out if any member of the media had done any serious work during the presidential campaign? Because love him or hate him, Trump's got the energy of a 60-year-old and a 50-year-old. And he's not always right, but he wasn't, my favorite Martian land. He wasn't talking about TV land and the Mary Tyler Moore Dick Van Dyke Show reruns. That was not on his agenda. Real estate developers, there's a real estate developer in Southern California who I think is, 90 years old. And these guys, and they're mostly guys, there are women real estate developers. They were my clients forever. And they do not get older. Why? Oh, I don't know, because billions are moving on every day when they, mix up their pencil, and the feds are after them typically, and the administrative agencies are trying to shut them down, and they're pirates. Now, pirates just got to stay nimble, and we have a problem. 1-800-520-1234. What do we do about it? I don't know. Not 25th Amendment land. The 25th Amendment is for one reason. We always fight the last war. It's for when you have a stroke. That's it. The only time the 25th Amendment works, I was in the White House counsel's office. I had nothing to do with the actual work. Fred or Dick, and they are the greatest counsel and deputy counsel to the president ever. And I know Dick is listening, and Fred might be listening. And I'm not just shining them on. They're the greatest counsel and deputy counsel ever. And they got the offices in the West Wing. And then the 7 lawyers, of whom I was the junior briefcase carrier, we were over on the first floor of the old EOB. And whenever there was a really tough constitutional law program, they entered my suite. But not to come into my office, but because I shared it with a guy named Roberts, who's now the chief judge. And they wouldn't turn left and come in and talk to me. They'd turn right and go in and talk to John, now the chief. So one day, Fred wandered over, and we have to invoke the 25th Amendment because the president's going to have colon cancer surgery. How do you invoke the 25th Amendment, you ask? It's not in the 25th Amendment, all right, for surgery, for elective surgery, not elective. I mean, he had to have his colon cut out, and he lived for a long time. Colon cancer didn't kill you. But he's going to go under for a period of time. And they let Roberts figure it out, which gave you a good indication of who the smart guy was in the suite. And that's how it worked. I defended with my life the seal of the President of the United States. I mean, if any chauffeur company was out there with the seal of the President of the United States, they heard from me. All right, so I did that. That was my job. I did a few other things. But, I mean, the high con law stuff, that went over to the chief, the future chief. And I'm telling you right now, the 25th Amendment is not written to be understood very easily because it was written by Congress. And it's written for Woodrow Wilson having a stroke and nobody finding out about it from Edith for months and months. It's not written for getting old. That ain't happening. So what does the president have to do? Be candid with himself. Dr. Biden, First Lady Biden, has to be candid with him. Ron Klain is a very smart guy, and I always get email from my friends who like to mock me for saying that, but he is a very smart guy. He's a lefty, but he's a very smart guy. Needs to adapt to an older executive, as does, by the way, every single Wall Street type who is serving a nonagerian or an octogenarian who owns the money. You don't get to say, stop it. No, that's not how you maybe some of you out there have dealt with a nonagerian or an octogenarian in charge. But I can remember my mom dealing with AT, my beloved 101-year-old, when he went to meet the Lord Grandpa. And Gramps lived on his own wheels to plus 100. Then he fell down, which is what happens. So he spent the last few months of his life not in his own house on his own wheels. He's a tough fireman, fire chief of Ashtabula, Ohio, and he drank a couple of shots of Old Crow every day. And he had a few cigars every day in his house. I don't know if it had been vacuumed in 20 years, but my goodness, he was tough. And tough old bird. And no one was going to tell him what to do, including his 2 daughters, and his son knew better. And so we had some wonderful conversations to teach me about getting old. But he wasn't running anything except AT. That's the difference. And so really, what do we do? What do we do? The president is not, he's too old. He's just too old. 1-800-520-1234. Chuck Schumer's too old. I mean, because he won't go tell people who are that old. Don't tell people who are that old that they're too old. By the way, Mitch McConnell was not too old. Do not play poker with that man. No, 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 no. I'll be right back, America. 1-800-520-1234. What do we do with a president who's too old? 1-800-520-1234. Stay tuned. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship Academy.
Welcome back, America. Queen Elizabeth celebrating her 70th year on the throne of Great Britain. The Platinum Jubilee is underway, and we've begun making plans for the Platinum Jubilee of the Hugh Hewitt Show on July 10th, 2070. And we already have the programming planned, and Jacob will be conducting that show somewhere in our memory. Let me remind everyone that Prison Fellowship Academy is a project of Prison Fellowship, and there is a banner explaining it all. I've had a couple of guests on. Cody Wild joined me this week to talk about why, if we want to help inmates become citizens
thousands of
and
people
have
like me
full and rich
every
lives,
single
Prison Fellowship
day.
Academy
It's amazing what
does that.
renewed
Let's listen to
values
Cody.
and purpose
To
can
have
do
people
to
believe
change
in
the
them, to walk
trajectory of a
alongside them,
person's
and to
life.
train
Prison
them to
Fellowship
become
is
good and
committed
flourishing
to
citizens. And not only
continues to
people who
impact
don't commit
thousands of
crimes,
people
but
like
people
me
who
every
perpetuate a process
single
of renewal,
It's
who take
amazing what renewed
responsibility for their
values and
communities
purpose
and
can
make them
do to
better.
change
To
the
build
trajectory of a
communities and to
person's
create
life. Prison Fellowship
opportunities
is
for men and
committed
women in prison to
continues to
practice and
impact
develop
thousands of
values
people like me
that
every
transform themselves and
single
others into
day.
good citizens.
It's amazing what
I knew
renewed
Chuck
values
Colson.
and purpose
Chuck
can do
Colson
to change the trajectory of a
and I
person's
worked
life.
together
Prison
on a special
Fellowship
for
is committed.
PBS. He was a friend of mine. And he's gone, but Prison Fellowship, he built such an amazing institution that people like Cody Wild, the vice president of programs there, can take a message out to be. They're not asking for your money. They're asking for you to understand the Prison Fellowship Academy. And there is a banner at hughhewitt.com, breaking the cycle of crime. Hard to miss it. Very much at the top. Please go there, take a look at it, and understand what you can pray for. You can pray for. It is possible for lives to regenerate, revive, renew, and be rewarded upon release with a rich and enduring legacy in life. I also got check markets for you, brought to you by andrewandtodd.com. And the interest rates went up a touch yesterday as the 10-year Treasury went up to 2.9. That means you're probably going to get an interest rate in the 5% if you're not paying cash for your house, and very few people do. But it's going to be 6 in a month and then 7 in 2 months because inflation is out of control, and we know it. So andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. They are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They lend you money. They underwrite your loan. They take all the data in and they decide how much you can afford, or they help you become a non-occupying co-borrower for your son or daughter, grandson or granddaughter, so they can buy a house now and get out of renting and build equity. They do it all. And they also help you refinance. And if you need an arm, you hit a rough spot and you want to refinance for 7 years and get a lower rate and get some cash out, they will do that. But nothing happens until you call 888-888-1172 or you go to andrewandtodd.com. Yesterday, the markets were not good. Everything was down. I wrote it down and now I can't find it. It's on the first page, of course. And Dwayne misplaced that, doggone it. And there it is. The Dow was off 176, the S&P was down 30, and the NASDAQ was down 86. And so Amazon went up, so I'm happy because it's about to split 20-for-1 share split, so it'll go up again today. And then the Steelers fans are going to wake up tomorrow, and they have one share of Amazon. It's worth $2,500, say, at the end of trading today. And tomorrow they're going to have 20 shares of Amazon. They're going to be worth $125 each, and they're going to say, what happened? What happened? Who took my Amazon and who gave me 19 shares of something that's different? And I just want to tell the Steelers fans now, nothing happens with a stock split. It's like making change. It just makes it easier for people to trade. And I think that's actually going to be beneficial for the stock because the morons who are over at Robinhood thinking that AMC is going to make a money and GameStop, they're going to start trading in Amazon. And those of us who are investors and just buy and hold are going to sit there and watch them. They're entertaining. But then they'll learn and they'll stop. I did that when I was a kid, and people who are kids or younger people like to think they are smarter than the professionals who spend all day. The quants are out there, all right? I was talking to a guy at a homeowners association meeting last night. He got a Chicago MBA. He's a quant. Really, do you think you're going to beat a quant? You're not going to beat a quant. You're not going to beat a quant. Buy something and stick with it, something that you know and understand. Don't buy the crypto stuff. If you can't explain it to me in 5 minutes or less, you can't tell me what it is. Go buy what you use. Procter & Gamble's never bad. And stay away from the rest of this stuff. I'll be right back, America. Admiral Mark Montgomery joins me next to talk about Guam, and it matters. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Queen's Jubilee, or Platinum Jubilee is today, so we're playing Queen music. I'm joined by Admiral Mark Montgomery, retired United States Navy. He is the author recently of an article in Defense One titled Guam Needs Better Missile Defenses Urgently. I wanted him to explain this to the audience at large. Good morning, Admiral. Welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, good morning, Hugh, and thank you for having me.
Now, Admiral, we've got Steelers fans listening, and they think Guam is made by Wrigley's. So we're going to start at the beginning. And Guam could tip over if we put too many Marines on it. What exactly is, where, and why do we care about Guam?
So Guam is a U.S. territory that is physically located in the Western Pacific. It's on what's called the second island chain. In other words, the second chain of islands away from the coast of China. It is a major U.S. military base. We have a large airfield there named Anderson Airfield. We used it during World War II. We used it during the Vietnam War, and we will undoubtedly have to use it if we get in a crisis or contingency with China. It also hosts a submarine facility, one of the only submarine base in the Western Pacific, and one of the few places where we could reload submarines in a wartime condition. And then finally, and not unimportantly, it's home to 170,000 U.S. citizens who expect to be defended in a conflict.
Well said. I would like to point out as well that airfields, if anyone saw Top Gun Maverick, and everyone saw Top Gun Maverick, judging by the box office, what did the United States Navy do first? It took out the airfields in the enemy, not named Iran, but Iran. First thing they did was cripple the airstrips. Why did they do that, Admiral?
Well, the criticality is to prevent the adversary planes from launching and taking on your aircraft. In the case of the Top Gun ones, the Iranian aircraft against the F-18s. For the United States, that is a critical base for establishing air supremacy in between the first and second island chains. But it's also where we would reload and launch refueling aircraft, potentially bombers, and certainly fighters. So it is a critical airfield to the Indo-PACOM commander's war plan for deterring or defeating China.
Now, Admiral, you had a very senior position in defending the Pacific, and I know you know this, but can you explain to people that just because China attacks Guam doesn't mean the world is ending? It's actually a likely target in a sub-nuclear conflict. Am I right in saying that?
Sir, I think you are, and to make sure that we think that they think that, the Chinese have actually put together patriotic videos of Chinese weapon systems striking Guam, and shown that widely inside the country and to their military. They've certainly put it on the table, and certainly it's something that we have to plan for. If they don't strike Guam, and they don't strike U.S. airfields in Japan, it is going to be the U.S. will eventually have its way with the Chinese.
Can you explain that?
We need two real strong capabilities to take on China. One is our submarines in an undersea warfare job, where we really do have a strong asymmetric advantage. The problem, of course, is submarine warfare is very slow, so that we will slowly erode the Chinese Navy through losses from our submarines over time in a conflict. The way we can rapidly deal with the Chinese Navy, which is the critical force for them as they try to do a cross-strait invasion of Taiwan or an attack on the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea against Japan. The quick way of doing it is with long-range anti-ship cruise missiles launched from Air Force and Navy aircraft, principally Air Force, the B-1 and eventually the B-52, and then with the Navy from the F-18 and eventually the P-8. And to do that, you need airfields. And if you allow us to maintain airfields in Japan and in Guam, we will be able to maintain the air supremacy we need to allow our bombers and our refuelers to penetrate and strike Chinese targets.
Now, for those who do not know, Admiral Montgomery recently served as executive director to the Cyber Solarium, which focused on cyber vulnerability and cyber capability. This is a different realm. This is about the stuff that we are used to in Top Gun and that we as civilians understand will happen. But it is possible to deter a Chinese attack by hardening Guam, even though they now have these hypersonic multiple reentry vehicles that go backwards and I gather can do pirouettes, and we don't have any idea how to shoot them down. How do you stop that, Admiral?
Well, you're absolutely right. We're going to have to stop a lot of Chinese missiles. They have thousands of cruise missiles that can reach out to the first and second island chains. They have hundreds of land-based ballistic missiles that can reach out into the first and second island chains. And they're now developing hypersonic weapons. Now, we have systems to handle the first two, cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, and we need to properly integrate them and place them on Guam, and that's what the article talked about. But you referred to a third thing, the hypersonic missile. And there, we also talked about it in the article. And what we say is, look, hypersonic defense is lagging hypersonic attack. Russia, China, and for that matter, the United States have been going gangbusters on developing hypersonic attack weapons. And you read about it in the press all the time, and the Chinese have done quite a bit of testing. The Russians have done some testing, and now the U.S. is testing. Hypersonic defense is equally important because, particularly for the United States, who is the democracy, we're not the first mover. We're not the country, the authoritarian nation that's going to strike first normally. You don't want the first mover, the authoritarian regime, to have a capability for which you have no defense. That puts deterrence in jeopardy. Therefore, it's critical that we get hypersonic deterrence going. What we recommend is that the Missile Defense Agency, an agency within the Department of Defense that's had some great successes over the years, that they be focused on tackling this hypersonic defense. They be given all the rapid acquisition authorities they need so they can get on this right away and help maintain deterrence in the Western Pacific.
Last month, Bud McFarlane died, and Bud McFarlane's role in promoting strategic defense initiative back in the early 80s was not much covered. That's what we sort of need again. And people laughed at Reagan, right? And now everyone understands SDI was actually a smart thing. How long does it take us to get from where we are to where we need to be in terms of defense against hypersonics, Admiral Montgomery?
Well, in my opinion, if the Missile Defense Agency is given the proper resources and the rapid acquisition authorities that they had, for the first 20 years of their existence, that they got, in order to build the systems that we have right now to defend against North Korea. If they get those rapid acquisition authorities and they get the resources, they can get the job done over the next 3 to 5 years. And that's the right kind of window to bring the system online, just as the Chinese and Russian offensive systems are coming online. But any delay by the Department of Defense thinking about it, slowing the process down, and that happens a lot, any delay by Congress in funding it, or any delay by the engineers at MDA making errors is going to put us at risk. So we really need to get started now.
So if we were going to go to a serious response, we would not only add resources, we would add urgency, and we would keep adding resources and urgency because I think, by the way, civilian talking, correct me and I don't mind being completely wrong, that if you harden places like Guam and Japan, you deter war completely because then they can't have the security of effectiveness with a first strike.
That's correct. The goal here, of course, is deterrence. The goal is to convince China not to attack because they don't know they can win. And that's about hardening our forces. That's about having deception, mock forces and things like that. Blow up planes. They literally help, as you spread them around. It's about demonstrating your willingness to fight. It's about having a credibility to your promises. And then finally, it's about making sure your partners and allies are strong. So the recent decisions by Japan to expand its defense budget significantly is a big deal. They're a very capable military that fights alongside us. The decisions to support Taiwan are equally important.
I also think DARPA matters, Admiral, and correct me here. If they think we've got secret stuff, and I saw Israel talking about their laser weapons, their directed energy weapons. If they think we've got it, it's like having it. But they won't think it unless we're actually building it, even if it doesn't work. Am I right?
That's right. So you're exactly right that one of our great advantages is the entrepreneurship and the creativity and the ingenuity of our engineers. And DARPA is the best example of it. There are some others, in the individual services. We have to be investing in those. So we recommend that we do a lot of experimentation. The Chinese will study this carefully, and they won't know for certain what we have. They'll just know we have a lot of it from their study. Two good examples are directed energy and high power microwaves, for very close in defense, frying a missile in its last little bit. But the other one is an old school thing, dirigibles. Putting them up, putting them up in the sky. When they have a radar on board, they have a phenomenal look down capability on inbound missiles, and they have an ability to detect the heat signature of some of other types of some of the more advanced missiles that we're worried about. So dirigibles really give us an old school answer with a new school twist. Could really help us here.
Now, let me go out on a limb here and ask you something, Admiral. It seems to me we have entered a new century, and the Navy is the predominant service. And I know this upsets my friends in the Army and the Air Force, but it is all Navy stuff. Is the budget going to reflect what is a naval century and a space century?
So, sir, I'm going to correct you slightly. I'm going to say it is a naval and air fight. Is the J3 the head of operations at U.S. Indo-Pacific Command? I looked at those as it's slightly. The Navy's probably about 50 to 60% of the fight. The Air Force is about 40 to 50% of the fight, and the ground forces, Special Forces, Space Force are the rest. That it is really the submarines and the Air Force and Navy aviation that are the big warfighters. So as we look at our budgets, you're exactly right. You have to make hard decisions. Just like during the wars in the Gulf, in Iraq and Afghanistan, as we plussed up our budget with what was called overseas contingency operations, it went predominantly to the ground forces. So we had an unequal budget process because we had an unequal threat or demand on the services. The Army was in demand. The Marine Corps was in demand. Well, we're now in a place where the Navy and the Air Force are in demand in our primary fight. So you do expect to see some shifting of resources. There was a slight shifting in the fiscal year 23 budget. I hope Congress continues that, and then the Department of Defense continues it in the 24-25 budget. I'm not optimistic, though, that long-term will make the really big shifts that are probably
Admiral,
necessary.
it requires a Nixon to China moment, the anti-communist. It needs an Army general. It needs a General Milley to step up and say it's time to shift to the Navy. Isn't that what it really takes, is an admission from the Army that we got to shift?
Yeah, and yes, sir. And he actually has said that once or twice about a year ago. I think it probably comes out. It's hard to come out of his mouth, and he hasn't said it enough. And the budgets that we get from the department don't exactly reflect that. I mean, honestly, we need to be shrinking the size of the Army down to about 450,000 troops. That was the number the Army, in its own quiet, not classified, but quiet studies determined in the 2016-2017 timeframe, but they continue to argue for 490,000 troops. And that money could be transferred to the Navy and Air Force and Space Force budgets and probably make a much more significant impact on our China warfight.
Faster, please. Admiral Montgomery, thank you so much. It's a great article. It's on my Twitter feed. I encourage everyone. I ask the Admiral to keep coming back and giving us that kind of smart analysis. I ask all of you to get relieffactor.com. Don't forget, second time I'm taking it today. Why? Because if you fall down and you hurt yourself, you're going to have to double down on what you take in terms of nature's anti-inflammatory. So there we go again with my... When I'm aching, when I've got bruises and bumps, and when I'm banged up, I double down on the Relief Factor, as you should. Nature's anti-inflammatories do work. I carried in curcumin, resveratrol, omega, 1995. Get you started. Welcome back, America. It's the Jubilee, the Platinum Jubilee, 70 years on the throne of Queen Elizabeth II. Jim Talent joins us, the former senator of Missouri, as a welcome guest. Senator Talent, we're laying plans for the Platinum Jubilee of the Hugh Hewitt Show, which is on July 10th, 2070. Will you put that in your date book?
I will. And
all right, good.
God seems to have answered those prayers because he saved the Queen for an awful long time. So maybe you will be on the air.
You know, we've got it all planned. We've got the sound effects ready. We're ready to go. But did you happen to hear Admiral Montgomery before you came on?
I did hear Admiral Montgomery, and I read his article.
What do you think?
In Defense One, and needless to say, he's right. Hardening Guam is, I would put it in the top 3 or 4 things that we need to do. Now, one of the underlying problems, and Mark didn't get into this, is that the department hasn't really figured out in a concrete way how it's going to defeat China in different contingencies, including a Taiwan contingency. This is the Strategy Commission said this a couple of years ago. Look, we can't figure out what it is we want to do and do it urgently until we know what we need to do in the event of a conflict. But obviously, protecting Guam, it's just common sense.
So, Senator, I'm a civilian. I don't know anything about anything, but I hear enough that we need to radically change the defense budget to shift assets to the Air Force, the Navy, and Space Force away from the Army. And we need a Nixon to China from General Milley. Did you hear that? Do you believe that? Will we get that?
Yeah, I think you're right. And what Mark said, it's a maritime and air domain, and it's the primary domain. Now, of course, another alternative would be to actually increase the top line of the defense budget to the point where we can provide all the services with what they need. And I think you're going to find when you look at, for example, the need to modernize the triad. If you look at the needs of the Space Service, if you look at the fact we have to replace the inventory of the Air Force, if you look at the fact we have to build more ships, and the Army still does have a mission, right? Particularly if we're going to increase force posture in Eastern Europe. So what that says is we need more dollars. But I would agree with you that even if the top line goes up, there needs to be an air and maritime focus, at least through a fit-up, through a 5-year defense plan.
So, Senator, I've been arguing in recent days for a $40 to $50 billion annual allocation through the states and federalism to provide for school safety via armed police on campuses. I just don't think we can, the country really cannot endure more Uvaldes. That's money. Now, the country spent $7 trillion federal dollars last year. It's not like the money's not there, but do we ever get the seriousness of purpose here? Prioritization of need and execution of the obvious.
Yeah, the number one thing, and I think you're right, the number one thing is hardening the targets. And the best way to do that is to have a response capability and then advertise the fact, because most of these are planned. In other words, people doing them, they're evil and they're crazy, but they're not irrational in terms of how they execute these operations. And so, yeah, I agree with hardening the targets. One area I would look into is whether it really is infeasible to have people there. Like, I know you said we shouldn't have retired officers. I'm not so sure we need guys and gals who are all at the peak of their training. It's something state legislators ought to look at. Can we supplement maybe one highly trained officer, not to save money, but because I don't know how many people are out there. In other words, you got a lot of school districts and a whole lot more schools, and can we have people who have, like, at the peak of their service in law enforcement, and have 3 or 4 of them at each one of these schools? So, I would be flexible in looking at what to do, but the main goal should be hardening the targets.
Yeah, all I know is what I know, and I grew up. My kids went to public schools, and there were a lot of them in the city we grew up in, and putting 2 cops at each of them is an expensive proposition, but. The Columbus officer who called last week and said, you don't want a rookie and you don't want someone who's 50 because they're not moving fast enough. So you want someone who's been in the patrol car for 5 years or more, and you want them to spend 2 years and get familiar with every campus. And by the way, if what you just said is important, maybe they don't need to be at every campus, but they've got to be visible often so that people think they are.
That's right. Deterrence is what yes, of course, if somebody gets into these schools and starts shooting, we want to get them. But what we really want is to deter them from going in the first place. And I think advertising the capability is a key part of that. Just, you've seen the signs on the internet for the schools that have done this. I thought your interview with Rick Scott was really good, and it's always a good idea in this situation to look at models that are out there and pick the ones that are working the best and begin there. And I'm sure that's what Cornyn is going to do.
That's why we had Senator Scott. As Governor Scott, he got it done. And so people ought to go and study what did they do. By the way, it was a Republican legislature and a Republican governor, and the proof is in the pudding. It's better. Not perfect, it's better. Senator Jim Talent, follow him on Twitter at Jim Talent. Follow me to Hour 3. Admiral Stav's got a new book out. Plus, I think Bret Baier is coming up. Stay tuned, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to salemnewschannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt live inside the Beltway on this, the beginning of the Platinum Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II. 70 years on the throne. Our congratulations to everyone in the royal household and all of her subjects. I'm joined by Bret Baier, host of Special Report. Now, Bret, we've been doing advanced planning here for the Platinum Jubilee of the Hugh Hewitt Show, which will occur on July 10th, 2070. We've got the sound effects ready. Can we play those for Bret? That's it. That's our audio from 2070. What have you got planned for the Platinum anniversary of Special Report?
Hopefully more than crickets chirping. I don't know. Listen, it is a spectacle, and I've never been a huge royal watcher, but on these big events, it's kind of interesting to watch. And obviously, we got our team over there, and 70 years on the throne. You think about all the Queen has seen in her time, and how crucial the UK has been to the U.S. So I look at more of it as a historical thing and back in time, what she's seen and been through. The pomp and circumstance is just fun to look at.
Yeah, Bret, I was thinking of To Rescue the Republic, your book about U.S. Grant, and when he went abroad after his presidency and how he was greeted. You want to recall that for people? I mean, they were trooping the colors for him everywhere because the Europeans love this stuff.
Yeah, he was vetted, treated to huge crowds every place he went, because not only was he the president who had just finished his term, but he was general who won the Civil War. And every place he went, it was a massive turnout, and he was, he and his wife were shown all the best Europe and really the world had to offer each place, and it's one of the reasons why Mrs. Grant really wanted to go back to the White House.
Yeah, and I like to remind people when TR quit and went around the world, the same thing happened. So when we celebrate the Queen, we are simply repaying the favor that our heads of state have received from other governments around the world. Now, Bret, it also makes me wonder, though, it's a bigger question, and it's not one I mean to surprise you with. You're quickly becoming America's newsman, America's anchor, and people are watching Special Report every night. I was honored to do the show last night. I love doing the show because I think those people are serious news watchers. What's your objective long term? I mean, when you start a job, you just want to do the job. But after you've been doing it, and you've been doing it a decade, or I don't know how long you've been doing it, but
13 years from Brit.
Really?
Over January 2009. Wow. I took over from Brit Hume. Yeah.
Okay, so the first couple of years, you're just trying to figure out how to hit the brakes, right? At least I was doing this radio show. But 23 years in, I start thinking about landing the plane in 7 years, and that's my plan. What do you want to achieve for Special Report?
It's really funny. I think about, goals, and I really want Special Report to be like the preeminent news source, and a place people could go and feel like they have fair coverage, and at the end of the hour, they get a sense of what's happening in the U.S. and around the world, and they get some perspective and analysis of it in a fair way. So I think we've achieved that. And, it's been this, if you build it, they will come thing. It's not the same as every other show on Fox. It's different. It's got its own sense about it. And Fox has been amazing to allow us to do that. So I want to continue to build it, continue to build that brand, and then do some long form pieces that enable me to focus on one thing, like our specials. And so we've been starting to do that. There's one that just launched on Fox Nation called The Unauthorized History of Vietnam, which is a series of pieces about kind of new research looking back at Vietnam and how people look at it differently today based on what we know.
I am looking forward to, I've only seen the tease on the search for the underwater battleships because my mother-in-law's first husband, if people can follow that, was a skipper of the Twigs when it went down to a kamikaze off of Okinawa. And I don't know if they've ever found the Twigs. I don't know which ships you found, but I am going to be watching that with great interest because the technology is now available. How do you find the time? I mean, you got General Milley over at Arlington. You've got others, but how do you find the time to do this and do 5 days a week?
Yeah. So you just make the time. I mean, I really love it. it's not like a chore. I really do love it. And I have great teams on both Special Report and the doc units. That lost battleships of World War II, it's fascinating, like all of the effort that went into it and some of the video that you see. I mean, the early days when we found the Titanic, and you remember the video, it's exponentially better now. And they're piecing together what happened to all of these warships that went down. It's really amazing.
No, I saw that, and I immediately wrote down, I don't know when that launches on Fox Nation, but I'm going to be watching. Admiral Stavridis is coming up at the bottom of the hour to talk about his new book, and we'll talk about that. Let's go back to what we talked about yesterday. You worked in breaking news. It was terrible news, but it was not the slaughter that I feared. It's a workplace or a marital murder. The inflation story, though, I talked last night about Las Vegas, and Generalissimo just told me they're not doing anything this summer because the cost of gasoline is $6 a gallon. You can't go anywhere. Did you get reaction to those segments last night? Because that is the story of everyone's life.
I think so, yeah. A lot of people reacted on Twitter and elsewhere, and they agree. I mean, look, you look at the polls, you look at things that concern Americans, and inflation is number one. It's the thing that's driving everything. So, as we get closer and closer to November, I think Democrats are realizing how much that's going to affect the outcome. I mean, you've got obviously the issue of guns, you've got abortion, and in unique individual local races, there are different things. But for the most part, it's how you feel at the kitchen table and what your monetary situation is. Now, it's not that great for a lot of people going check to check.
I'll close with this. When we're talking about a particular race, and I picked the Nevada Senate race, it's because a lot of people used to drive from L.A. and Orange County and Ventura County, the 101 to the 10 to the 15 into Vegas. That drive has tripled in cost in the 6 years since I left from California. That's money that's not, if they even have it when they get there, if they even go, they can't spend it in Las Vegas. I think Nevada has got to be the Democrats' real worry that they're not talking about at this point, Brett.
Well, I agree. And I think there are a couple of others that could pop up that are not on the radar right now. And Nevada is clearly one of the races that Republicans are looking at and saying this could turn. Listen, some things can happen between now and then, but if the trajectory holds, you're looking anywhere from 25 to 40 seats in the House, and you're looking at 2 to 4 seats in the Senate, which is really all they need.
That's all they need, and I hope it happens. But you don't say that because you're an anchor and a newsman. Bret Baier, thank you for joining us. We'll be watching Special Report tonight. Set it on your VCR, America. It's America's newscast. Let me also tell everyone that AndrewandTodd.com are out there. They are sponsors of my show. I do my own ads. Unlike Brett, when he does Special Report, he gets to go to commercial break. I get to tell you about AndrewandTodd.com, and that's because they will finance your house. Refinance it. Gas is cutting into people's life and food and everything else, but you still have to send your kids to college if you've said you will send your kids to college. And you may have saved for 18 years and suddenly find that tuition's gone up, and you may have to refinance your house to make that dream come possible. If you've got to do that, I bet you right now the advice that you will get from Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian is to use an ARM. Now, I have not talked about adjustable rate mortgages in years because they didn't make any sense in years. But now they make sense again for people who know they will move within 5 or 7 years, which is the average time you spend. They do not make sense for a first-time purchaser who may be in a house for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. But they do make sense for some people who can refinance again. And I also believe with my heart that this will be the Carter-Reagan cycle. And it's begun. And the Carter-Reagan cycle on interest rates is a sharp, steep rise right now. So if you lock in an ARM right now at a low price, 7 years from now, you'll be able to refinance. I really do believe that. Now, some people got caught doing that at the wrong time. And that's why you need professionals who care about you, like Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian. Call them at 888-888-1172 or go to their website, andrewandtodd.com. I only let people sponsor the show whose products I use or intend to use, and Andrew and Todd have refinanced us or got us mortgages repeatedly. Everybody on the show, everybody I know, Not everybody I know, but everybody I know who tells me that they tried Andrew and Todd, and they very, very impressed with them. Stay tuned, America. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
If you become a member of the Universe, you not only get every previous Hugh Hewitt show, you get the after show, the best podcast you've never heard. www.huniverse.com.
I hope you're standing up, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. The Queen's Platinum Jubilee is underway, and we're prepared for our Platinum Jubilee on July 10th, 2070. Dwayne's got some ideas, and we're in pre-production already because we don't let anything go to chance on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Let me tell you, because I'm going to be talking with Admiral Stav through the break, who's coming up after the break to talk about his brand new book, and it's a grand book, To Risk It All, 9 Conflicts in the Crucible of Decision. He is going to be fascinating, so I'm going to tell you about Relief Factor in this segment. There it is. All right? There it is, relieffactor.com. Normally I do it at the end of the third segment of every hour, and if I'm throwing you off because you don't listen to that segment and say, what are you talking about? Relief Factor are the 4 pills that taken together provide the natural anti-inflammatory boost that your body needs. If you are exercising or if you're aging, you're definitely doing the latter. You should be doing the former. And if you're doing the former the way I did the former 2 weeks ago and fall down and hurt your hip, then you really need relieffactor.com, because if you are like me and you can't take NSAIDs, then you got to find something, and it's just not pleasant to recover from any kind of surgery, injury, or other bumps and bruises of being uncoordinated or coordinated. You know, I now know what a hip pointer means. And relieffactor.com will help you do that. $19.95 3-week starter pack. They're all over TV. I won't do TV ads. I do like to talk about them on the radio because I use them on the radio, and you can't do that on TV. And I just use it every morning, and I tell you about it. Sometimes I take it twice a day like I did today when I'm trying to get back and rambling again. But the fact of the matter is $19.95. Coming up, Admiral Stav, do not go anywhere. I do want to go back and play for you the sequence of first the executive from the Perigo CEO talking about the government shortages in the shortages in formula that the government ought to have seen coming because everyone else did. Cut number 10.
The very first thing we did when we heard about the Abbott recall was we could foresee that this was going to create a tremendous shortage. We significantly increased all our material orders. We began communication with the FDA immediately. We began collaborating closely with the FDA, our retail customers, and other stakeholders to identify and prioritize what was most critical. And we've been meeting, by the way, weekly with the FDA ever since.
All right, so the FDA knew from the start. The manufacturers knew from the start. Nobody told the president. Maybe they did tell the president. We really don't know. But the president said this, cut number 11.
Here's the deal. I met early on with those CEOs, and they were trying to figure out how they could move quickly. And you've been very helpful, so thank you.
You know what? He did not meet with the CEOs early. Guess what? Here's Jim Garrity's piece from the National Review. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you'll see Joe Biden is too old to be president. Now, we're not affiliated with National Review. When I tell you about go watch 2,000 Mules at salemnow.com, that's a Salem-produced documentary. And I will disclose, I got no connection to Garrity except he's a guest. I got no connection to National Review. They don't pay me a dime. I'm not obliged to tell you this. I'm just saying, go read Joe Biden is too old to be president, and then listen to cut number 12.
The question you always, on every single thing, why didn't you act sooner? Well, I don't think anyone anticipated the impact of the shutdown of one facility in the Abbott facility. And it was accurately shut down because it was, the formula was...
Stop right there. Everybody just got done telling him we all saw it coming. And I don't think anyone saw that coming. Cut number 3, my favorite clip yesterday.
Today, we're announcing the United Airlines has agreed to offer cargo space for Kendall NutriCare for the delivery of 3.7 bottles of the formula here in the States.
So the 3.7 bottles of the formula, like I told you, I had double coupon day for grandkids 10 days ago, and their cousins born on the same day. And 3.7 bottles of formula is not going to get you through one day with one infant anywhere. I don't know how much he's talking about. Neither does the president. He can't read the prompter because Joe Biden is too old to be president. But pray for him. We all have to. But don't avert your eyes, America. That's the situation. Admiral Stavridis joins me next to risk it all. 9 conflicts in the crucible decision, the perfect Father's Day gift. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. The Queen's Platinum Jubilee is being celebrated by us today. I'm sure as it is by Admiral Stavridis, who I am quite certain, despite having served in more jobs than I can count, some of them had to have involved the Royal Navy. He is the author of the brand new book, To Risk It All, 9 Conflicts in the Crucible of Decision. And I'm going to talk to him at length about 9 conflicts and the crucible of decision. But Admiral, you have to have a bunch of buddies in the Royal Navy.
Oh, I have too many to count, but I'll highlight one. When I was a young destroyer captain off the coast of the Balkans, I had command of USS Barry, and our running mate ship was HMS Nottingham, and young Commander Ian Moncrief was the captain of Nottingham. And the two ships just operated together for, 3-4 months in combat conditions there in the arms embargo blockade against Serbia. And Ian and I became very close friends and remain so today. He went on to become a 2-star admiral in the British Navy, and we have such close relations with them.
I'm sure Americans are celebrating as they fet our presidents and head of state when they go abroad. We fet the Queen today. Let's talk about To Risk It All, Admiral. 9 conflicts in the crucible of decision. I've tweeted it out. It's the perfect Father's Day present, by the way. You are the author of 6 solo books and 5 co-authored with a couple underway. So you are making us over 60-something guys very, 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 very looking bad. When are you going to stop this?
Oh, I'm just always been a writer. I was that kid in high school who was the editor of the high school magazine and Naval Academy Log magazine. Love to write, love to share ideas, just part of who I am.
Well, this book profiles the stories of it. I want to run through them so people get the names. Captain John Paul Jones, Lieutenant Stephen Decatur, Admiral David Farragut, Commodore George Dewey, Cook Third Class Dory Miller, Admiral Bull Halsey, Lieutenant Commander Booker, Rear Admiral Michelle Howard, and Captain Brett Crozier. And I'm going to talk specifically with you as a teaser about Jones, Booker, and Crozier because you tie yourself, Jones and Booker, together, and because many will recall Captain Crozier in the TR's bout with COVID, and TR is also featured in Top Gun Maverick. Couple of preliminaries, though. Have you seen Top Gun Maverick yet?
I am embarrassed to say I have not, but it is at the absolute top of my list. Speaking of Father's Day, great Father's Day 1-2 punch, To Risk It All, and tickets to an IMAX to see Top Gun 2.
That is the perfect 1-2 punch. Tickets, I saw it on IMAX. It is well worth seeing. People need to see it. Second preliminary, I want to know the 10th story. You have 9 great decisions, 9 great seamen profiled here, and seawomen profiled here. Who didn't make the cut? If you'd done one more chapter, who would it have been?
I think I'd have to go with Admiral Arleigh Burke, who is, as you know, a personal hero of mine. Not super well known to the American public, but the longest-serving Chief of Naval Operations in U.S. history, commanding officer of destroyers, a Commodore of destroyers. And he said once, and I love this quote, that the difference between a great officer and a mediocre officer is about 10 seconds. And what he meant by that is that ability to make decisions under extreme pressure with the compression of time, and in his case, in the furious heat of combat. That's a good line to remember. Arleigh Burke was very close, but these other stories are extremely compelling, I think.
Well, then I want to give you the 11th man. Oliver Hazard Perry in the battle for Lake Erie, Don't Give Up the Ship. The decision to change from one ship to another. I just can't believe that you don't like Ohio that much, Admiral. And I understand North Florida people don't like Ohio State taking all their recruits, but really Oliver Hazard Perry is the guy, but we'll come back. Let's first ask the general question. What do these 9 seamen have to do with people who don't even own a Duffy boat or a 15-foot Boston whaler, or if they do, can't even run them? That would be me.
Yeah, that's the essence of why I think this book is important. And tragically, Hugh, we don't need to look any further than the headlines of mass shooting after mass shooting. In each of these events, very ordinary people, and here I'm really not talking about police and first responders, but ordinary civilians, teachers, doctors who are in a congregation, they face a moment where they may have to risk it all and make that kind of very difficult decision. I'll give you a very practical example from one of these recent shootings in Laguna Woods several weeks ago. A congregation is locked in by a gunman who enters from the back. He's got a gun. He's marching up the aisle, obviously intent on massacring this congregation. A civilian, a Dr. John Chang, honor his name, leaps up from his pew, immediately sizes up the situation, and attacks and tackles this gunman. That gives time for the rest of the congregation to pile on top of him. They subdue him. They tie him up with extension cords. Tragically, one person is killed, Dr. John Chang. He chose to risk it all. He saved that congregation. His 85-year-old mother was in the congregation, and he was a pure civilian at a moment of high risk under extreme pressure. Believe me, these moments can come for anyone, anywhere, in a mall, driving by a terrible automobile accident, standing at a bedside in a hospital when a decision has to be made. The idea of the book is to help people prepare for those moments.
You know, I've also seen people collapse. Many people collapse. And if you do not act immediately, they will die. It's the golden hour, right? You've got to get them. So that's what I expected, but I wanted to hear it in your own words. Let me talk to you as well about, I was just talking about your book with Bret Baier. He is doing a special on the sunken ships of World War II. They all represent decisions. Every one of those commanders made decisions. You talk about the most famous, the Johnston, and the charge of the tin can destroyers. Every one of those sunken ships made decisions. You're not second-guessing anyone. You're just examining everyone.
That's exactly right. And part of what we bring out in the book, To Risk It All, is that no matter how you pick, there will be critics, and they will be people who weren't there when you had to make that decision at a moment of extreme crisis. And without question, you have to be ready to deal with that aspect of things. And by the way, the story of Commander Ernest Evans, captain of the Johnston, as you mentioned, he led the charge of the tin can sailors, effectively bluffed the Japanese battleships away from a completely vulnerable landing force at Leyte Gulf. It's an extraordinary story. And oh, by the way, he was a Native American who won the Medal of Honor. His whole life story is simply remarkable, but his courage in that moment of furious combat, determined to charge those battleships. Those ships were 10 times the size of his destroyer. Just remarkable courage. And he was really the inspiration for the entire book in many ways.
And it's a well-told, tense story folded into the introduction. I'm going to start with John Paul Jones in just a moment, but at the beginning and the end of the book, you quote a North Florida saying about knowing the difference between quitting and getting beat. I'd like especially young people to hear that. There is a huge difference between quitting and getting beat. Indeed there is. And that simply means you give it your all, you fight as hard as you can, and at some point you may lose. You may lose the battle, and you have to be able to accept that. What you can't accept is quitting, is giving up, is laying down. And that, I think, brings us front and center to John Paul Jones. It sure does. I love your phrases, which are, I've been to his crypt, and your retelling of your time as a midshipman, I will leave for everyone who's going to be a midshipman to talk about. Indomitable fighting spirit, superb mariner in an age of sail, personal courage, remarkable. You note that he had served on slavers, which was new to me. Now, I actually read a lot, and I didn't know that. And I'm wondering, in your reading about Jones, did he ever have a moment of, they were death ships. They were horrible things, and they brought about conversion in the most famous instance of all, Isaac Watts. Is there any record of his questioning serving on slavers? He was not a deeply introspective person who left books and notes and letters. So, no, there's no explicit statement. But I would say this about John Paul Jones. He did serve in slavers, but he left. And he never looked back. He never went back. He spent the rest of his life fighting for liberty and democracy and believed deeply in this new republic of ours. He's also a very colorful person. Let's face it. He has a lot of
different things. And he's the answer to a great trivia question, which is who's the only person who's been an admiral in both the American Navy and the Russian Navy? Because after the revolution, he went and hooked on as an admiral in the Russian Navy, and probably a complicated man. But I would say what we need to remember about John Paul Jones, of course, is his determination in battle, his sense that no matter how dark the moment, you fight, and you fight on and again. And that's a through line for the U.S. Navy, I think, in many ways.
I love give me a fast ship, for I intend to go in harm's way. I also wonder if the upperclassmen asked the midshipmen, what did John Paul Jones say? Because there's no right answer, right? If you say, I have not yet begun to fight, they're going to say, no, it's I will make you strike first, and vice versa, right?
Indeed. And that phrase you just rolled out of give me a fast ship for I intend to sail in harm's way is also the title of an absolutely terrific novel and a pretty good black and white movie starring John Wayne, and Henry Fonda plays Chester Nimitz in the film In Harm's Way, which is set in the Second World War. So again, it's the idea of these through lines that come from John Paul Jones and drop into the inferno of the Second World War, for example.
I also like, for civilians out there, the Admiral notes about John Paul Jones. It's important to maintain and cultivate good friends. His friend is Ben Franklin, who's a pretty good friend to have if you want a ship at the beginning of the revolutionary conflict. But would you tell us, we got 2 minutes of the break, Admiral, what is the key conflict for which he is famous, and why the crucial decision point for him?
Yeah, this is 1779. He's in command of a good-sized but kind of beat-up old U.S. warship, Bonhomme Richard. He sails it improbably on a cruise around the British Islands to try and strike at the heart of the Imperial Navy, the Royal Navy. He gets in a battle off the east coast of Great Britain, and he's overmatched. The ship fighting him is the Serapis. His ship is blown up, burning, sails are down, masts down. It's a terrible situation. The British captain calls across the water as the two ships grapple and says, "Sir, now is the time for you to strike your colors," essentially asking for a surrender. John Paul Jones's crew is imploring him to surrender. John Paul Jones says, "Sir, I have not yet begun to fight." And he, through his own spirit, revives his crew, and they overmatch the Serapis. They win the battle. I have not yet begun to fight as part of that through line for our U.S. Navy.
We're going to come back after break and talk about how that connects up with Lloyd Booker. But I want people to know as well that I did not know until I read this that John Paul Jones had to manage a rather unpredictable Frenchman in the course of his battle. There's a lot of great history. Your condensing skills are amazing, Admiral Stavridis. So stick around, America. I'm going to continue to talk with Admiral Stavridis about his brand new book, To Risk It All. To Risk It All is available at Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, and bookstores everywhere. To Risk It All is a great Father's Day present, which will get there in time if you order it today. Pub date is today. Go out and get To Risk It All. We're going to come back and talk about a couple more of his 9 profiles right here on The Hugh Hewitt Show. Stay with us.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to salemnewschannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. On the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, I'm talking with Admiral James Stavridis, retired United States Navy, former Allied Supreme Commander of Navy, former head of Southern Command, the author of many books, his most recent out today, To Risk It All, 9 Conflicts and the Crucible of Decision. I want to move to the chapter about Lieutenant Commander Lloyd Bucher, Admiral, and I picked this up because when the Pueblo incident happened, I was 12 years old, and it's just very vivid in my memory as being the poor guys, and of course the North Koreans exploited them in the blinking of the eye. You tell the story. I'd like you to tell the story again, but to answer a question, where was our air support?
Oh, Hugh, it was a disgraceful moment, in my view, for the U.S. Navy in the sense that it was nowhere. And, of course, the story of Lloyd Bucher is a tragic one in so many different ways. He starts out as a diesel submariner. He gets surfaced at the end of the war. And then in 1968, he's in command of this tiny little intelligence gathering ship called the USS Pueblo. And it is operating in international waters, but off the coast of North Korea. And in the dead of winter, January 68, it's attacked by a variety of North Korean vessels and MiG-21 aircraft. Bucher is frantically trying to get air cover. He's frantically trying to get support there, and he is faced with a terrible decision. He has to, if you will, risk it all because the Koreans surround the ship and say, look, we'll give you 2 choices. We can either sink the ship and machine gun any crew that float around in the water, or you can surrender the ship. He had no means to resist. Even the single 50 cal he had up forward was frozen in place. Anybody who went up to try and unfreeze it would have been a death mission surrounded by Korean small boats. So he surrendered his ship. And as you know, Hugh, it was a deeply controversial thing for him to surrender the ship because of all the things we just talked about with John Paul Jones. The ethos of the Navy is we never give up the ship. We never surrender the ship. Your point, Oliver Hazard Perry, John Paul Jones, I've not yet begun to fight. But having said all that, and I've thought deeply and looked deeply at this case, I think that what it says in Navy regulations is you don't surrender the ship while you have means to resist. I feel as though at that moment, Bucher made the only decision available to him. Tragically, he came back to the United States eventually after a year of brutal torture. We finally got his crew released, and the Court of Inquiry recommended a court-martial. However, the Secretary of the Navy, John Chafee, intervened at that point, and I think it makes sense to do so. So he was not court-martialed, but he was, if you will, disgraced, retired from the Navy. It's a tragic story, and I titled the chapter in the book, I'll close here with the title, No Way Out. There was no good answer for Lloyd Bucher.
Couple of key things. One, Chafee, who was the runner-up to Spiro Agnew, sadly, to be President Nixon's running mate, a Marine and a Marine's Marine, and a great American. Secondly, I did not know until I read To Risk It All that it was 190 feet of water, so to scuttle the ship would not have put it beyond the reach of the North Koreans. That's a key detail. And I never knew until I read To Risk It All that this occurs almost simultaneously with the rather reckless effort by the North Koreans to assassinate the South Korean president. We are on the precipice, right, of a nuclear war. And I don't know, Bucher doesn't know this either, but history does have a way of, counterfactuals, as you present. Maybe we get planes there. Maybe they take out the Koreans after a sinking ship is too late to save. But generally, history must judge Bucher okay.
That's my view. And I think at the time there was a lot of emotion about this. And I talk in the book To Risk It All about working out one day down in the Pentagon with retired Vice Admiral Hal Bowen, who was the head of the Court of Inquiry. And I can't even remember how the subject came up, but I said to him, I was, I think, a lieutenant commander at the time, and I said, well, sir, I think probably Bucher did the only thing he could do. And Hal Bowen, who was the most genial man in the world, turned and froze me with a look and said, Jim, he gave
Oops. We just lost the Admiral. So let's try and reconnect with the Admiral because I got more to ask him about. And are you back with us, Admiral? Not yet. He went. It's what happens in Florida. You see, it's the Bermuda Triangle has been moving slowly on shore, and people don't know about that over the last 25 years, is that the Bermuda Triangle has been slowly advancing onto the shore of Florida, so that if you connect by phone, occasionally your guests will go away. So to risk it all, the Admiral's back. Admiral, you were just about to say in the gym when you were talking to the Admiral, what did he say about Lloyd Booker?
He looked at me with two very cold eyes, and he said, "Jim, you just don't get it. He disgraced the Navy. He disgraced the nation. He failed us." And it was a hard thing to say. And again, Admiral Bowen, very fair-minded individual, but there was a lot of that kind of feeling in the Navy at that time.